everybody, how's it going? Hey, Lauren. Happy to have you here. So this is a very exciting week. So on Tuesday, we had the arrival of our very first red wolves. So hooray for new species, hooray for new animals. It's very exciting. So we had the arrival of Mist and Caroline. They are two sister wolves, red wolves, that came from, they were born at the Durham Museum of Life and Science, so just down the road, and then spent almost about a couple years over at the Mill Mountain Zoo in Virginia, and then just came here. So they're, like I said, sisters. They're about 3 years old, and they're going to spend a couple years with us. Our goal with Carolina Tiger and housing red wolves is to help alleviate some space for facilities that are breeding red wolves. And so when you're breeding red wolves and you're accumulating more animals, well, where do you put the ones that are then post-reproductive and getting a little older? Well, they need space to then make room for new wolves. So we are hoping to be that facility to kind of take that burden off of them. So the SSP, Species Survival Plan, thought that it might be easiest for us to learn kind of ins and outs of red wolves by getting a couple young ones who are a little easier to work with. So then when it's time to take in the older wolves, we know what we're doing. So we'll have these girls for a couple years, we'll get to know them, and then we'll be prepared for our next set. So, all right, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background about red wolves, and then we'll kind of get into the ins and outs of how we're managing them. So to give you some history, red wolves were very prominent throughout the southeast U.S., all the way up through Pennsylvania, and then all the way down through Florida. So they really are our American wolf, only wolf that has lived in the continental U.S. Wolves, when people think of the red wolf, they think of this bright, shiny red wolf. Well, they're not bright and shiny red. They're actually mostly brown and tan. They've got some black on them. The red you're going to see around their muzzle, around their ears, and even on their legs. People tend to confuse them with coyotes a lot of times. So the coyotes are going to be similar in color, but they're going to be smaller. Red wolves are going to be average around 50 to 80 pounds. They've got long legs, thick chests, thick bodies, and big feet, where the coyotes are smaller in size. They're only about 20 to 40 pounds and smaller feet. They also have a very smaller face. Life expectancy. So in the wild, red wolves expected to live around 6 to 7 years, and then in captivity around 15 years, so almost doubling their lifespan. They're really critically important to our ecosystems because they're going to eat things like nutria that are invasive to our ecosystems, that are going around and eating up a whole bunch of foliage and whatnot. They eat deer, they eat raccoons, they eat rabbits, rats, mice, so small mammals. So they're really critically important. So the red wolf is one of 2 officially recognized wolf species in the U.S. And as I mentioned, the American wolf, because it really is our wolf. And it's the only native wolf to North Carolina. So we should be really proud of that. So where in North Carolina does the red wolf live? We're talking about the eastern area of North Carolina. There's 5 counties in Albemarle County, and they were released into the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. If you don't know, red wolves are critically endangered. Right now, there's only 20 to 30 wild red wolves left. That's not very many. So we're hoping to increase that population. And out of those 20 to 30 individuals, only about 8 of them are actually collared. Now, talking about in captivity under human care, there's 223 red wolves living at 49 conservation facilities, but you know what? It's 50 now because we are one of those facilities. So hooray, right? Very exciting. All right. All right, just to give you some history real quick. Red wolves have had quite an uphill battle. Like I said, they were very prevalent throughout the southeast. And then up until the 1900s to the 1920s, we really started targeting them and killing them. Unfortunately, for predator eradication programs, people were concerned about their livestock. Hunters were concerned about the lack of deer for them to hunt. And so we really ended up wiping out this population of large predators on the eastern part of the United States. So what happens when you wipe out the large predator? You have coyotes come in. you have other animals come in, and then you throw the entire ecosystem out of balance. Coyotes are a problem for red wolves. So red wolves, if they have a very strong, sturdy population, they're going to be able to keep coyotes in check, out of their area, and keep the ecosystem in balance. But when there are fewer red wolves and more coyotes, and a red wolf goes up and can't find another red wolf to mate with, it's going to mate with a coyote. And so that's what happened for many years, is that then we ended up with hybrids. We had red wolf coyote hybrids. So during this eradication program, the coyotes moved in, numbers just started plummeting. We lost really that good concentration of pure red wolf species. So by 1972, biologists started an effort to try to preserve the red wolf. They started gathering up all the canid-like red wolves that they could find. And there was only a small population of them left on the Texas-Louisiana border. So out of the 400 wolf-like canids that they captured, turns out that only 17 of those were true red wolves. That's such a small percentage. And then of the 17, they could only viably reproduce with 14 of them. So that's our starting population right there to rebuild the entire species. Had the work cut out for them. So the Point Defiance Zoo out in Washington started the SSP program for red wolves, and that's where all this came from. Okay. Unfortunately, by 1980, red wolves were declared extinct in the wild. The breeding program through the SSP, the Species Survival Plan, was very successful. They did a really good job of breeding red wolves in captivity. And then by 1987, they were able to start releasing red wolves into the wild. They picked eastern North Carolina, Albemarle County, specifically that national refuge that I mentioned, as a target area to release red wolves. So populations in the wild grew. They kept releasing animals. They kept fostering pups into the wild. And by 2006, we peaked at 130 wild red wolves. Not pretty bad from starting from a population of 14, right? But here's where it gets a little sad and unfortunate. The red wolf population has definitely been targeted. There's been a lot of dislike for predators, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. There's been targeting at the red wolves and the program, and some of it's been due to just lack of predators, some of it's been political, but over the years, the Fish and Wildlife Service really kind of stopped protecting the red wolf. They stopped making efforts to protect them. They started allowing legal hunting of them. They started allowing the capture and killing of them, and so this really decimated the population. Actually, several NGOs had taken the Fish and Wildlife Service and the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Council to court over their mismanagement of red wolves, and they won. And so with that effort, with lots of people saying, we support this, over 70% of North Carolinians support the red wolf program, we're able to nudge the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service back into action to start actually protecting these animals again. So unfortunately, by 2020, we were down to a low point of only 7 individuals left in the wild. That's really sad. So as we are heading back in the right direction, we've started releasing animals back into the wild, which is a big pro. And we've released about 17 animals since of May 2021. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is scheduled to release another, I believe 8 or 9 by the end of this year. So hopefully with that effort, they'll continue to reproduce and have more wild cubs so we can get those wild population numbers back up. All right. And just a reminder, we are at 20 to 30 wild red wolf individuals. All right. So back to us. Why are we caring for red wolves? So the red wolves really fit with our mission and what we do here. As Carolina Tiger Rescue, we believe that the ideal home for wildlife is in the wild, and that's where red wolves belong. We want red wolves to succeed in the wild. We want them to be back into the wild. We believe that it's critical to conserve habitat for wildlife. If we can't find national refuges and places for them to exist, then there's going to be nowhere for them to live. We want to make sure that land is not all converted to agriculture, that everything is not urbanized. We have to have wild places to have wild animals. We believe that captive breeding should only be done in accordance with SSPs, those species survival plans. Well, the SSP program is why we have a wild population to begin with. They got to such a low number, and the SSP program was able to bring that number back up and successfully reintroduce them back into the wild. And then lastly, obviously we believe that wild animals deserve to be treated with respect and not exploited for entertainment. So you're going to see that in the way that we are going to manage and care for these red wolves. As much as we would love to show you guys and walk down and visit them, we're going to have to settle for the video for right now. Louise got some excellent footage, but we want them to remain wild. So we don't want lots of people going to visit. We don't want to be throwing treats at them. We don't want to have lots of noise down there. And so we want to give them that respect and privacy. So for this whole program, we have been partnering with the Red Wolf Species Survival Plan. So I've thrown out that term SSP a whole lot. What is a species survival plan? So the species survival plans were created by the AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and they focus on threatened and endangered species. Now these are designed to maintain healthy and genetically diverse animal populations for the future by keeping track of individuals and their genetics. So SSPs, not only do they breed, they're going to engage in research, conservation, public education, conservation genetics, and reintroduction plans. So the Red Wolf SSP in particular has worked hand in hand with the Red Wolf Recovery Program, and that is the program actually releasing red wolves back into the wild. So they're doing that through captive breeding, right? That's how we're here. Fostering wolf pups to wild parents. So one of the cool aspects about this program is that how do we increase red wolves to the wild? Well, we can certainly take adults and release them to the wild, but what better way to raise wild pups? So if we have a captive mom with young, and we know that there's a wild mom with similar age pups, we can take those captive pups, sneak them into wild mom's litter, and then mom can raise twice as many pups. She won't know the difference. It's fine. But who better to raise a wild wolf than wild mom? So, all right. Public education. So this is one part that we really want to be active with, is that they may not be on tour, but we want to talk about them on tour. We want to educate people about the importance of the red wolf and why we should support them. And then maybe, hopefully, one day we will have some red wolves on tour. And then obviously with XC2 research, scientists, keepers, we can all observe red wolves in captivity, and those notes then can help researchers and scientists learn more about red wolf behavior in the wild, because they are elusive. We can't always observe everything that they're doing, but we can see what they're doing here in captivity. So this has been a long process. We have been working on this for about 7 years. So Tuesday could not have come any faster. We are all beyond thrilled to welcome the red wolves here. We have had such support from the North Carolina Zoo, from the Durham Museum of Life and Science. They have been so supportive in helping us figure out how to build the enclosure, what to expect with behavior with the red wolves, where to get the food, just everything in between. They've come out multiple times to kind of help guide us through this process, and so we couldn't be more thankful for that. We've been able to visit other facilities with red wolves to see how they, manage their animals and take some of that information back here to us. So obviously we have carnivores here. We're familiar with having to deal with carnivores, but the wolves are different. Wolves are canids. We have never had canids before. This is new to us, and so this is exciting. So what's different about the red wolves is they have to remain release ready. What does that mean? So any red wolf has to be ready to basically be reintroduced back into the wild at any given minute. Not saying that the girls are going to go tomorrow, but in the future they could be released, or they could help raise wild red wolves that are going to go out to the wild. So that impacts how we're going to feed them. So we want these guys to be able to, if they're going to be released into the wild, to know what good food is, what safe food is. And so that means eating deer, eating beaver, nutria, rats, quail, wild turkeys, wild ducks. We don't want to feed them chicken, turkeys, domestic rabbits. We don't want them to walk up to a farm and go, oh, I remember chicken, you tasted really good. That's going to get them shot. We want to keep them safe. So everything from how we feed them, what we feed them to how we feed them. So we're not going to walk up like we do the food shoots to the rest of the cats and put the food down, ring the dinner bell, come on, let's get it. They need to be scared of us. They need to have a healthy respect of people and things related to people. So we're going to feed them we might do a drive-by of walking by, throw some food, and we're gone. And by the time we leave, they go, oh, yeah, there's some food there. We might be able to go in while we're cleaning the enclosure, drop some food as we're walking around, but we don't want them to associate us with a meal, because again, that's going to keep them safe. Same thing with enrichment. We love perfume, we love obsession, it's awesome, but we don't want to use it with the wolves. Again, keeping them healthy, keeping them safe, and so that means things that are natural. So things, any kind of extracts that are natural. We can use some of the straw that maybe Molly the bobcat used. Bobcats are native to North Carolina. We can put some of that in there, use another animal's fur. So we're going to have to be a little more creative there. All right. So all in all, this is just going to kind of affect how we handle them, how we deal with them, and how you guys can visit them. So we're going to ask you guys to kind of hop on board with us and, just give them a nice, healthy respect and space. I know everybody's itching to go see them, and we're going to make sure everyone can see them at some point, but that just means we're going to have a limited number of people going down to see them at one time. We're not going to have a bunch of people being able to stand around, holler at them, call them, make noises. It's going to affect us as keepers and how we care for them. And this is all, again, just to make sure that they're going to be well cared for and safe, and then they can also give the red wolf population a future. So, as I mentioned before, we're going to have these ladies with us for a couple years, and then they will move on to their next facility, and then hopefully we'll be ready to welcome the next set of wolves. So, that's about it. It was kind of a quick overview. Do you guys have any questions about red wolves or anything? No questions? Okay, Ruth.
I have a question. So eventually, we will probably be caring for elderly wolves who would never go back into the wild. So my question is, at that point, would we change our approach a little bit? Would we be more likely to have people able to look at them and interact with them more than
Okay, I'm going to repeat that because that was a really good question. Ruth asked, so for our next set of wolves, we're getting older wolves. If they're never going into the wild, can we then adjust a little bit, maybe go see them a little bit more, maybe build a little more relaxed with the enrichment? That's an exact question I had for a lot of the other wolf sanctuaries and wolf facilities. So the short answer is we want to keep everything the same. And the best explanation of that they provided was they've actually had older wolves that raised young pups, that those pups ended up going into the wild a short time after, reaching sexual maturity. And so if those older wolves that raised young wolves taught them, hey, people are okay, you can come up, you can get fed, if they taught them those bad habits, that then is detrimental to those younger wolves. And so you never know in what capacity those other wolves are going to be able to be helpful for the Red Wolf Recovery Program as a whole. But that's an excellent question because I had the same question. Yep. Other questions? All right.